Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
The Small Business Administration acted in record time to suspend ATI Government Solutions from federal contracting. SBA made the decision the day after a video emerged from the O'Keefe Media Group, a right-wing activist organization, showing that an official from ATI admitted to defrauding the SBA's 8A program. For more on the broader implications of the ATI suspension, Federal News Network executive editor Jason Miller joins us now to discuss. Hey, Jason.
Jared.
So what was the reason for this suspension in the first place? And tell us a little bit more about this company.
Absolutely. Now, basically what happened was a senior program manager from ATI Government Solutions met with James O'Keefe. Now, James O'Keefe was in disguise. So this is kind of something he's known for doing. He's a conservative activist who we've seen before has engaged in deception to conduct his investigations. And then in the video, he basically got this ATI executive or senior government manager to admit that they are a pass-through in many times to larger firms. Now, what this ATI employee said was the company routinely does what they say less than 50% of the work required under typical 8A contracts. Now, there are rules and exceptions, but the rules generally say that you have to do at least 50% of the work on an 8A contract beyond giving that to your partners. This is to avoid this idea of pass-through. Now, ATI Government Solutions is owned by the Susanville Indian Ranchera tribe. They've been in the 8A program since February of 2019. And I did a quick look at the usaspending.gov website. And in 2025, ATI had 32 active government contracts worth more than $144 million. The Treasury Department was their largest customer.
And so how unusual was it for that suspension to happen as quickly as it did?
It was highly unusual, according to the experts I spoke to. Now, under the suspension, SBA issued it government-wide, so ATI cannot receive any new contracts or any follow-on task or delivery orders. They can continue to work on existing contracts that are funded. Now, in addition to the company, SBA also suspended 3 ATI executives. Their founder and CEO, Firmenich Crutchfield, Scott Deutschman, the co-founder and corporate development officer, and Marina Molavenia, who's ATI's CFO. Now, since SBA's suspension, GSA, Treasury have also suspended ATI. Now, what's interesting is SBA's suspension is government-wide, so really what Treasury and GSA are doing is really just piling on the pressure by announcing that they, too, have added to that suspension. Now, SBA made the decision to suspend ATI and its leadership unusually quickly. I talked with Sam Lee, a former director of policy and planning and liaison at SBA, and now the managing partner of Sam Lee Law and author of GovCon Intelligence. He says typically agencies go through a much more detailed process before making a decision to suspend a company or a person.
Ordinarily, in suspension debarment, an agency would go through a fact-finding process. They may issue a show cause letter to the company to get the company's side. The reason for that is suspension is a very serious penalty and consequence. That company is now prohibited from getting new government contracts, and in most situations, it can't receive options or orders. In most subcontracts, it can't get a subcontract either. So suspending them is preventing them from getting most types of government awards. SBA did this, looks like within a 24-hour period, most likely without getting input from the firm.
Lee says ATI now has 30 days from the time of suspension to come back to SBA with the reasons why it shouldn't be suspended. He says he would have expected the firm to have responded fairly quickly with their side of the story and explain why whatever was said in the video is not necessarily meriting the suspension of this type. Now, I reached out to ATI several times, including their law firm, but didn't hear back. And the Susanville Indian Ranchera Tribal Chairman, Arian Hart, did post a statement on Facebook, and it reads, "The Susanville Indian Ranchera, a federally recognized Indian tribe, is aware of the inquiry by the SBA regarding the tribe's participation in SBA's 8A program. They are committed to fully cooperating with SBA and providing any and all information necessary to enable a thorough review. The tribe has also launched an internal investigation to ascertain all relevant facts and determine the best course of action for the tribe." He goes on to say integrity, accountability, compliance are foundational to their tribal government and their business operations, and take this, obviously, allegations very seriously.
And so just to zoom out a little bit, Jason, SBA has been conducting this broader review of the 8A program for quite a few months now. What does that review tell us? And does this ATI situation play into it in any way that we can tell?
It's hard to say right off the bat whether or not how this ATI Government Solutions situation plays into it, but we know SBA did kick off the internal review of the 8A program back in July after news broke of a bribery scandal through the 8A program at USAID. Now, what we know so far is the audit is being led by SBA's Office of General Contracting and Business Development. They're collaborating, obviously, with other agencies. Remember, this is the office that's also responsible for certifying 8A companies and reviewing agency 8A contracts. So it's interesting to see who's leading this effort. SBA says the scope of the review will focus on high dollar and limited competition contracts that have been awarded over the last 15 years, so going back to 2010. I also spoke with Nicole Potroff, an equity partner with the law firm Coprince, McCall & Potroff, and they work with a lot of 8A and other small firms. She says there are several reasons why there are problems with 8A contracts. Sometimes she says it's on the government side, not including certain provisions. Sometimes it is true fraud by companies, but really more times than not, what the problem is, 8A companies struggle to understand the rules of the program.
I'm not surprised that there are investigations going on. And here, I don't know, I didn't review the contract or anything. I don't know whether it included everything it was supposed to, but that's really a really important question when the government is investigating these types of companies, any kind of 8A companies that have gotten 8A work, is that factor of False Claims Act versus simple mistake. So this happens quite a bit too. I hear from clients a lot that very genuinely, innocently thought they were complying with the limitation on subcontracting for 8As, which it obviously just cites straight to the regular limitation on subcontracting and says it's the same. But plenty of clients think, oh, well, I can exclude this amount of money, or, they're a similarly situated entity, and they just don't understand those things. So they think maybe because another company is small that they're similarly situated, and we have to explain, no, they have to be 8A. So those types of things happen fairly often. That is, to me, pretty innocent mistake, and the type of thing where our advice to clients is typically like, let's definitely be upfront about it. Let's tell SBA, let's tell the agency, but let's also immediately work toward compliance and make the changes we need to make. Those are not typically things that rise to the level of these very scary federal investigations where DOJ gets involved.
No, I've also talked to Lee, and he says while he hasn't heard from companies or getting auditing letters from SBA or other agencies, it's clear from the video that SBA are really looking at what they call the limitations of subcontracting rule. You heard Potroff talk a little bit about this, but that's commonly referred to the 50% rule. And there's a lot of kind of concern about whether or not companies are being passed through to larger businesses or not. So I think, Jared, generally speaking, I think we know some of the places where the investigation is heading.
And so once again, to look at the bigger picture of this program, should other contractors who are already in the 8A program or might want to be, should they be worried about the future of the program?
So Lee and Potroff both says it depends. The typical lawyer response, right? Now, on one hand, the Trump administration is sending clear signals through the accusations of widespread fraud and other actions that 8A, more broadly small disadvantaged businesses, are less of a priority for them. In fact, the Trump administration lowered the government-wide goal to 5% from 15% for STBs soon after they took office. Now, Lee says companies in the 8A program today may be getting a little bit of whiplash.
The number of awards being made in the 8A program has dropped precipitously. The number of companies getting into the 8A program also has dropped. In the last year, it was over 550 companies that were approved for the 8A program. And as of August in 2025, there are only 66 companies that have been approved for the 8A program. So it's getting much harder to get in. And then once you get in, the number of awards is less, and you have this additional threat of an audit.
Now, of course, Jared, this all comes after the agency set records in the number of contracts and the amount of dollars going to 8A firms in 2024. 13% of all eligible prime contracts went to 8A firms in 2024, worth almost $42 billion. So obviously a lot of money, a lot of interest, but then again, a lot of scrutiny is coming down on that program.
All right, Federal News Network's Jason Miller, thanks very much.
Always a pleasure.
And you can find Jason's story at federalnewsnetwork.com.